Thank you everyone for coming. A warm welcome to the Institute of Gerontology here at the College of Public Health. We're so honored to host you tonight and to collaborate with the Alumni Association for Chat with the Changemaker. I'm sorry, my child is up here. This is working.
She's keeping it all running smoothly.
I thought my son would be distracting enough, but it's not. But anyway, it's wonderful to have you all here. We have a very special panel planned today. In front of you, you're going to hear from amazing experts in the field who all have different perspectives on aging, where the field is headed, all of the things that are influencing the public health grand challenges surrounding aging. One thing we always say here at the Institute of Gerontology is that we are all aging. So for those students in the room, you're like, I don't know if I want to study aging or not. It applies to everything, right? It's a lifespan approach, and you'll hear more about that today. We have two. Our students get younger, and we have two amazing student panelists today who have planned out to start the discussion. But I want the audience to know that please feel free to ask questions. There'll be designated times for that, and our student moderators will help organize that. For those of you who joined us on Zoom, thank you so much for joining. We will keep you on mute only because this room, the acoustics aren't great, but please utilize the chat to ask questions. And we have multiple people monitoring that chat, so your voices will be heard. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to our student panelists who will introduce themselves and our wonderful panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Janae.
I'll just take a video of all of that.
Thank you, Sophia. Hi, my name is Catherine Chang. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Department of Health Promotion and Behavior, and I was the student lead for Bullitt County for CARE.
Hi, my name is Jada. I am a first-year MPH student in the Department of Health Promotion and Behavior. I'm also a graduate research assistant here at CARE.
We thought it'd be really fun to open things up by talking about aging. Like Janae said, we're all aging, but really in particular sharing one thing we love about aging and one thing we don't really love about aging. You know, for me, I love getting to watch my family grow as we start having little ones incorporated and just keep expanding. I think we need a bigger table. The probably worst thing about aging for me is the importance of a good pillow. You know, one wrong sleep and I'm like paying for it for a month. But I know Jada has hers as well.
Yeah, so I think the best part about aging to me is how much more knowledgeable I'll become as I get older and more appreciative of different things like family experiences. And also in terms of what I think might be the worst part of aging is how my eyesight will possibly worsen because I already lose my glasses at least once a week. So I don't know how that will look when I'm older, but hoping for the best.
Aging is something that bonds us all, so we find that really interesting. And we're hoping, as we ask our panelists to introduce themselves, that you guys would each share one thing you love about aging and one thing that's, you know, not so great. I'm going to start with which way, Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Correia. I am faculty here in the IOG, and in the clinic that we have here, I am the clinical neuropsychologist. So a clinician by training, and my area has been predominantly in older adults. I spent quite a long time, though, working in the VA system before coming here. And my research has been predominantly in brain imaging, particularly brain imaging of vascular changes in the brain in aging. And so what don't I like about aging? Vascular changes in the brain and aging. Who wants that? But it happens to all of us. What I like about aging is from my perspective, is you know, two things. Like there used to be a time when I could stay up till 2 or 2:30 in the morning to churn out that grant proposal or that paper. I can't do that anymore. That's not. I just don't have the energy to do that. But what is better is that when I'm doing academic work, I'm far more efficient, and I am able to ask far more difficult questions of myself. And I think that comes with experience, and that comes with with learning and for lack of a better term, wisdom. So that's what I like about it.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, well, I'm Leonard Poon. I used to direct this place a number of years ago. I came to UGA in 1985 to be the director, and at that time it's called the Gerontology Center. It wasn't the institute. So let's see, what did I do? Well, just going to give you a very short history. It may have to do with the answers I give of your questions later on. I started out as an engineer, system and industrial engineer. I worked in aerospace engineering, Lockheed, in Sunnyvale, California, building submarine launched missiles. And after that, I got my PhD in psychology. That's a big jump for me. But I liked it really better. That's because I wasn't a good engineer. I mean, I was an engineer. I guess I worked and I made my money as an engineer, but I just didn't have my passion there. And somewhere along the line, I learned about psychology, and I got my master's and PhD in psychology. My engineering degree is from San Jose State in California. Then I went to University of Denver for my master's and PhD and in experimental psychology. And that's where I learned from engineering to memory and learning. And I kind of stuck with that a little bit. Then I did my postdoc at Duke at the Center for the Study of Aging and Human Development. And I didn't know anything about aging, but I couldn't get a job, just like my mentor in psychology. He has lots of grants and he didn't have to teach much, and I thought it was great. And I wanted that job, but I couldn't get one. And I was offered some jobs, but it was just too much teaching. And so, but Duke in the study of aging and human development, and I didn't know, and I believe at that time, it was a leading center in aging at that time. The Duke longitudinal study was there. And it is housed in the medical center. And this is where I learned psychophysiology, electrophysiology,
What do you like about aging, and what is your least favorite part about
you
aging?
want to cut me off.
No, sir. I know you're brain lapsing.
But
I do that all the time.
coming back to where I started and want to share, what I'm doing. But anyway, the Institute of Gerontology had kind of a long history. As I said, I came in 1985, but the Center for the Study of Aging or Gerontology Center had been here since 1960s. And what they did was to cultivate faculty from different departments. And when I came, there were faculty from 50 different departments working together. And but just by happenstance, there is a archive here at the what is that? Harvard Library on stories of centenarians collected by sociologists, and the university had the thought that perhaps we should acquire that database. Perhaps faculty and students can use that data. I didn't know anything about centenarians, and I didn't know anything about well, I know something about aging, but not that much. And we decided to go and acquire that data. But then looking at that data, there's lots of missing holes in it, missing data. And a faculty member decided we should start our own centenarian study. And that's how it got started.
Awesome.
And about 1986 or 7 or thereabout, we put forth the grant to NIMH. and for a cross-sectional study of old people, 60, 80s, and 100. And that was the first cross-sectional study. And it was a collaboration between UGA and MCG. And then after that, we did a longitudinal study, so there was a second NIMH funding. Then after that, we thought aging is a kind of a cross-discipline and interdiscipline, study. So we had 9 universities from different disciplines, from genetics to neuropathology, to different areas of neuropsychology and personality and sociology come together. So 9 universities come together for a program project grant that lasted 10 years. And that's called the Georgia Centenarian Study. And it was housed here at this institute. And from there, it expanded into an international consortium across 12 countries that meets every year, even today.
What a legacy. Thank you.
It's about 30 years worth.
Share. Wow.
So I know what's so good about aging.
Yes.
Now I'm answering the question. I agree with Steve. And I think I agree with all of you too. I think the experience, good, bad experience you've earned and experience, I think play in what you do. And so it would provide you with bias. This is your background, and I'm 81. And so I have 80 years of experience, good and bad experiences. And I use that experience to judge what I do on a daily basis, yearly basis, so on and so forth. And I think I like that advantage of having the experience. I don't always make the judgment and decisions still, and I think I have another 20 more years to go. So by the time I'm the centenarians, I can say, well, I have 100 years of experience. I still make mistakes. So I think that's a good background to start out.
Absolutely.
Now, what is bad about aging? I can share that with you. I think there's physical and physiological changes that make you not as efficient as you once were. And I still think I'm 40 years old, but I'm double that age. And so I guess a combination of things that I cannot do, and things I can do, I think that makes a very interesting life. I'm sorry, I'm taking so long.
It was very informative. I think we all appreciate getting a little background. So thank you for sharing with us all. Go ahead, Claire.
Wow. I should have sat all the way.
Too late now.
My name is Claire Alvey, and I am a program manager for value-based care. I work for Piedmont in Atlanta. I worked for Piedmont in Atlanta for 8 weeks, so I'm not going to talk very much about that. Prior to my current role, I was a nursing home administrator. And so I got my license in 2020, and then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and that was my career. But I did go to UGA. I graduated in 2016. And then I graduated from in health promotion, and then I did my MBA MHA through Georgia State. Most of my experience is in post-acute care. So both working with home health, hospice, but mainly in a skilled nursing facility as an administrator. My take on like and dislike of aging is going to be slightly different. I would say what I dislike about aging is the effect
that it can have on both the individual and the family. That can be really, really hard. So I think that's what I dislike the most is that piece. What I love is the stories and the perspective and experience that I am hopefully gaining and that also I get to hear. So that's what I love about aging.
Those are awesome. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Saint Hamiton. I am a clinical assistant professor here in the Institute of Gerontology. I'm the director of social support services for the Care Center. And I started out, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. And then I did my master's in social work here at UGA. And I worked for a couple of years in public health for the Northeast Health District. And I actually worked with families and young children. So I worked with the Children First program. And I was the only developmental specialist for the entire district, so all 20 counties, doing a lot of home visits and driving and resource providing and all of that. And then I went back to school and got my PhD in developmental psychology. And I did a lot of my work on early life. So pregnancy and childhood. And then when I graduated with my PhD, I just decided that I was going to come over here. I knew Lisa Renzi-Hammond, who's our director, and Janae had a really cool grant that she needed somebody to be the project manager for. And so that was kind of my first job out of my PhD program, and I just fell in love with it ever since. And so I think what I'm able to bring to aging and to the Institute is kind of a lifespan perspective. I teach classes like early life influences on aging, where we talk a lot about, you know, how the things that happen to you and the choices that you make and all of that across your lifespan influence how you age. You know? And I teach like intro to lifespan health psychology, things like that. So I really, really love working here. I also work in the clinic as director of social support services, and I run our caregiver support group and supervise master social work students who provide all of our case management and support services and things like that. So that's kind of the perspective that I'm coming at this from. And if I have to think about what I really love about aging, in my experience thus far, is the continual growth and deepening of connections with the people around me. I think there's a lot of personal growth that happens, you know, as we age. And if we're facilitating positive connections with our loved ones and family and friends, that's a really positive thing in my view. And then what I don't like about aging is that so far it seems like time speeds up and goes by a lot faster every year you get older. It seems to be how it feels.
All right, thank you for all of those lovely introductions. So we want to move on to questions regarding gerontology and careers in aging. And just for the record, throughout our chat, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or let one of us know, because we want to make this tonight as much as engaging as possible. So to start our conversation, I want to specifically ask our panelists, why should we care about aging?
I will say for the reason that Janae said at the beginning, because we're all doing it right now in this room. It affects all of us. And why should we care about that from an academic research and care perspective? So that we can learn the things that help us age most effectively. And what that means, I think, is different for different people and different cultures in the world. But when I think of my personal thing, when I think of aging healthfully, I think of staying cognitively sharp. I think of staying physically sharp as to the best that I can. and emotionally sharp as best I can. And I think that all of that, that's a big picture piece, but there are so many components to that, from basic molecular science and cell science, right through to psychological science to even consuming of art and literature. There's so much that we can do to promote healthy aging. So that's why I think we should care about it. And it's, to Sarah's point, it starts early, like really early, developing good habits that promote brain and physical health and emotional health.
That's a great answer. We're going to jump. So we're going to ask a bunch of questions and anybody is welcome to answer. We do have some specific questions for you guys. And obviously we'll be taking questions from the crowd if anybody has any questions. But feel free if anybody wants to answer. That was a really good answer.
Can I add to what Steve said?
Absolutely.
Everything Steve said, I agree with. It's not reason not to. But aging is living, period.
Mm-hmm.
Aging is a process. And the things that you talked about, those are processes by itself. As we are students, and those who are grown up, that tells you what to do, teachers, that our society and our institutions are built on silos. If you take a look at, for those of us in academics, into the National Institute of Health or National Science Foundation, this is where we go to get our money to do our work. These institutions are built on silos. You have a National Institute of Heart and cancer and everything else. They go within the silo. And in my work, in my last 10 years in this PO1, Program Project Grant, which is 9 hour ones running together, NIH didn't know how to manage us. We went to the National Institute on Aging, and they're supposed to be advocates for aging and know something about aging. They don't know how to manage geneticists with neuropathologists, with psychologists, with neuropsychologists, social scientists, and such. And so it's not, but aging is living. We do all that thing together.
Yeah.
Our health, our brain, our thinking, decision-making, caregiving, families, interpersonal relationship. So we cannot, those of us in caregiving, you're working with families, and you're actually working with, you can work with basic and clinical sciences too. Is that we need to be aware of that process and know how to use it.
Yeah.
And how to think in a holistic way.
Can I expand on what?
Yes, but we're going to give you a 45-minute timer to do second. We're not going to be here all night. I'm going to give you a timer to do it so that we can move on to some of our other questions.
I bet you Steve and I can take up all.
Yes.
So,
All right, and
ready to go. Wait, so what I wanted to say is that's what Dr. Poon just said is absolutely true. And this one of the things that I enjoyed and attracted me about working with older adults in a hospital setting is because perhaps more so than with the younger folks, when an older person's hospitalized and it requires input from the geriatricians, it requires inputs often from neurology, from oncology, often, unfortunately, psychology specialists like myself. It requires coverage of such a broad discipline of people, including, and very importantly, social work folks, so we know what's going to happen to those folks when they get discharged and plan accordingly. How did I do it?
43 seconds. Great job. You got to put them on the timer. Well, you guys talked a lot about like all the disciplinaries that can feed into this field. You know, what does it look like for somebody that's interested in gerontology or the field of aging? How should we all go about getting into that field?
So we have a undergraduate minor in gerontology, and we have a certificate in gerontology. And I think those would be great ways as students to kind of get a feel for what the study of aging is all about and what kinds of careers you can get into. But as these two are talking about, aging applies to all of us. It is and it is so interdisciplinary that I think you can find that if you're working with humans, you can find a way to make it connect to aging. Because even if you're thinking about like being a pediatrician, that would seem like the farthest thing from aging, right? But how many of your patients are going to be raised by their grandparents, or have their grandparents are the ones who are bringing them to their appointments? Having an understanding of aging and different factors that are important when you think about aging can be really helpful, kind of no matter what career you go into. You're working with humans. Well, animals do that. Different.
I mean, even fields of science, fields of academic pursuits that we don't normally think of as being involved with aging, working with humans. Like, so for example, what's going on now in aging, especially in dementia research, there are people who are, very high-end AI and data scientists, mathematicians working on things. And you can even build missiles and get into gerontology, I just learned tonight. Which is pretty amazing.
Agree with all those things. I think it really kind of depends too on where your interests lie. You're getting a lot of academic exposure here. I don't come as much from the academic sector. I'm more in the healthcare, caregiving, and I'm not a caregiver myself, but I've worked with lots and lots of caregivers. So I have no clinical background, but I still have to understand and know a lot about aging in that process to be able to do my job well and to be able to connect with people. Like you said, it's all about connecting with people because, again, we're all aging. And whether you're a caregiver or a loved one, or if you are the person aging, it's important to be connected with it.
Well, I think aging is lifespan development. And I think no matter what your interests are, it would be good to, I think we study, I guess, college students. You have college students as subjects in psychology. And that is a very small part of lifespan. And I think I've learned in working with geneticists, pathologists, nutritionists, or psychologists, that they need to have sensitivity to what change over time. And when we talk about changing over time, that's aging.
Yeah.
And I think if you are very focused on a specific time of life, you need to, in order to be comprehensive in your knowledge on that time of life, you need to know what precedes it, you need to know what follows it. And to me, it's just common sense. But, as I said, our systems are built on silos. And we tend not to think through the systems.
Great. So we'd like to pivot our discussion slightly to how we communicate about aging. Specifically, how do we appropriately discuss aging with our family and friends? And to start, could someone provide a definition for ageism and how to avoid it?
Sarah?
Kind of negative stereotypes or assumptions made about a person based on just their age. And it doesn't only apply to older adults. I mean, have any of you, students, ever been expected to know how to do something or not know how to do something because of your age. Yes, yeah, I see a lot of nodding going on. So it's definitely something that happens across the lifespan. But we also know that it is very bad for our health. It has really negative consequences for our health.
So how can we avoid that, and how can we talk to family and friends about aging and healthy aging?
So avoiding ageism, I think just comes from self-reflection. So a lot of the really negative aspects of ageism are occur when it's internalized. So if you're thinking about your own internal picture of, this is a stereotype of what aging looks like. If you're only focused on negative things in that stereotype, that's very bad for your own health because, as you get older, those are the things that you're focusing on. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, If people who have more positive perceptions of aging tend to be a lot healthier and a lot happier. And so I think it really does come from self-reflection, noticing when we say, when we make comments that are ageist and just kind of recognizing that, not beating yourself up about it, but saying, I wonder where that came from, and thinking about the way that the media portrayal of aging and just our societal views of aging may have contributed to those kind of gut reactions that you might have, those stereotypes.
Thank you.
I have a specific question I want to ask is, what is the correct terminology when addressing older individuals that we should use?
Typically, we talk about just older adults. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We tend to steer clear of the term elderly because that doesn't really connote positive feelings about aging. It tends to just focus on, physical impairments and things like that. Does not connote independence for sure. And so we tend to just say older adults, younger adults. That seems to be the most neutral term.
Does anybody in the audience have a question about communicating about ageism or aging in general for our panels? Yes, Caleb.
So I guess I'm kind of talking to Sarah and Steve, that's the co-respondents. When you're interacting with families that have come, to get some kind of a diagnosis for a family member or a loved one, do you see ageism in that population? And if you do, how do you kind of handle those situations? Are you trying to, talk to the family and try to give them a different perspective about how does that?
Yeah, that's a tough question. You ready to take a crack at it? And I can as well.
Yeah. So I would say anytime that I notice somebody, saying, oh, well, I'm too old for that, or, just making some sort of assumption about their own abilities based on just their age. I do try to be curious about that and ask a little bit more in terms of just questions to try and find out, is it that, actually it's really that I have a knee injury. It's not that I'm 76 years old. It's just that I have a knee injury, because I think what can be really damaging about these kinds of stereotypes and assumptions that we make is that, like one of them, for example, is that, you've got to stop exercising or doing things that you really love to do that are physical activities because you've gotten older. No, that's not the case. The fact of the matter is that physical activity is incredibly important for your cognitive health across your lifespan, your heart health, all of that. Maintaining, muscle mass is really important. And I tend to think of it as though you just have to take the same kinds of precautions, just kind of smart precautions. So if you, are a person in your 20s, your 30s, and you are not an avid runner, you wouldn't go out tomorrow and run a marathon. right? Like you would have a plan, you would build up to that, you would take it slow, you would account for any sort of particular health problems you might have, you know, the same kind of thing applies with older adults too. You just have to be aware of, you know, where you are in terms of your physical fitness and slowly, you know, just take it slow to avoid injury.
So where I see it, in terms of doing clinical assessments, I see it working two ways and in two spheres. So one is the person who is coming in and is really doing quite fine, it turns out, but they'll say, you know, well, I'm forgetful because I'm old. And so what we know is, you know, well, maybe your memory's not quite as sharp as it used to be, but it should be still pretty darn good. And so using the excuse of age for what, or attributing, taking normal everyday memory slips that we all have and saying that they're happening more often because they're aging, because I'm just getting older, when in fact, because I'm a clinician, something more nefarious is going on, right? The other way that I see it is akin to what you said in our treatment recommendations. Oh, I could never do that. I'm too old for that. I can never increase my physical activity. It's, you know, I'm an old person. And I have those same conversations, or learning new technology or things like that. So I see often people coming in to see me who sort of impose an ageism bias on themselves. It's really quite remarkable that that's how pervasive it is in society.
I think too, to add to that, just more from a like long-term care perspective, it's, at least from what I have seen, this is anecdotal, it's not research based. I often see someone that comes in, you know, is in a skilled nursing facility, and the resident or patient has certain concepts of what they can and can't do, but sometimes it's based on what their loved one is telling them they can and can't do.
Yep.
So I think from a caregiving clinical perspective, it's really important for us to listen to the patient. Yes, you know, patients can have dementia, but it's also very important that we listen to them and dig into the details of what's going on wholly, rather than just what they might say initially, like you said.
Well, to me, ageism is a blatant bias. And that could happen to anyone. And you can say, some of the example is that I can do it because I'm old, don't ask me to do it. That's a bias on that person's part. It also goes to the doctor, the physician, is that I can make a diagnosis on you. That happens to me all the time because you're old. And then there is a true diagnosis of that condition. And because that doctor cannot find that diagnosis that can make a difference, they can say, yeah, you're just old. Yeah. And we see it all the time. And so the bias in the physician expert, so-called, and there's also bias on the person who's getting old. So there's a whole bunch of studies that look at these attitudes and bias and what happened if you take out the negative bias and instill the positive bias. They can certainly do better than they think they can do. So from a neuropsychological perspective and from a cognitive aging perspective, there's a term called metacognition. I think you probably have heard of it, or meta-memory, what you think of your memory. And that's true that you can make your self-assessment, because the big thing of people coming to a neuropsychologist is that I cannot remember names. Right. I mean, that's probably the very first memory complaints. Yep. So there's association between memory complaints and cognitive complaints and actual performance. They may be positively related, negatively related, or no relationship whatsoever. And so it could be due to so-called normal aging. And normal aging is such a thing. So in terms of neuropsychology and cognition, is that certain types of memory and decision-making would go down with age normally.
Can you give us an
certain types of-
example?
Pardon?
Can you add an example?
An example? Well, what we know of so-called fluid intelligence, learning new information, that with healthy, normal adults over time, whether you study them cross-sectionally by age group comparison or longitudinally following the person over time, that goes down dramatically, practically in a linear way. That is called fluid intelligence. And there's another type of memory and cognition called crystallized intelligence. And that is the dictionary in the head that who's your family, what's your name, what's your best friend? If you're a tennis player, how do you play tennis or go through the strokes? Those are things that's like in your dictionary, and it's called crystallized intelligence. That stays pretty much intact, and over time it may even improve over time. And so you take a look at crystallized intelligence between young and old people. Frequently, the old people can outdo the young people. That's true. And so, as I said, ageism is indeed a bias. And this is a term coined by the very first director of the National Institute on Aging, Robert Butler, in 1976. And he had written a book called Ageism. Now, how do you combat ageism? Man, that's a big time question. I think the bias is so ingrained in all of us, whether we are just ordinary people like us or expert like Steve. We all have them. And it's just how blatant it is and how much damage these biases can do.
But I think there are ways that we can combat it, just like with any other ism, just increasing the diversity of representation in even just movies, TV, the age ranges of people in television shows, movies, things like that, in advertisements, increasing the diversity of that would go a long way towards helping us have a more nuanced understanding of the diverse experiences that people have as they age. Aging is not just a single experience. Everybody stays an individual as they age.
That was all very, very informative. Thank you, guys. We have a really interesting question
Let me
on.
add one thing to this.
We have a couple questions. Okay.
Just to extend what you're saying, is that diversity is part of culture. And culture is part of education, gender, race, and there are biases contained in everything in our culture, whether you come from a big city or a small town. Your experience kind of show you which way to go because you're used to it, and this is the way it is. So when you're talking about that diversity kind of opens our eyes and to provide more input to our basic thinking, and those input could change it. But the thing is that there are big grants available now for talking about fighting ageism, specifically ageism, and to find ways to how to do it in our everyday life, in our culture, and within and across culture. And I think if you guys can come through with a way of doing this, and diversity, you'll start.
Thank you.
All right, so we have one question from the chat, which is how to work with clinicians who are frustrated with progressive illnesses. For example, some physicians will be dismissive of chronic conditions due to expecting problems at the patient's advanced age. And this could be extremely upsetting to the patient who wants to pursue aggressive treatment and achieve a high quality of life. So what would you recommend?
It's a loaded question.
It's quite a question.
It's a good one.
So basically the question is, if I could summarize it, you've got it in the chat in front of you, is how to manage physicians who show biases with regard to care that end up withholding or minimizing treatment for the condition.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think we've hit upon that already. I mean, so this idea of ageism and bias, and you talked about it. It affects the medical field too, and so in terms of how to manage that, I think the best thing to do is to be an advocate and a participant in your own care or the care of the loved ones, and really advocate for what you want for that person. Seek second opinions. Push back against your doctors if they tell you things. It's a tricky thing. So for example, we had a patient here not so long ago who has a series of nerve tumors in this person's body. It's a very painful condition, and they can be treated, managed by medication, managed by surgery. And I was impressed actually, because I know that in my experience working with physicians, that sometimes physicians are really reluctant to undertake an aggressive treatment to fix a problem, simply because the person's older. It turned out that I saw the person, did some cognitive testing with them, and then when I did the feedback, by the time to get the feedback, I had the answer about whether or not they were going to pursue the surgical means or the medical management means. And the person was disappointed that they were going to pursue the medical management means, but because the physician had gone through, and not just one, a panel of physicians had gone through what the risks were for the surgery with that person's other medical conditions. So I thought that was a good example of, not just a knee-jerk ageism reaction to you're too old to undergo the surgery simply because of your age, but because of the comorbidities that the person had, and really making a reasoned decision about it. And I think if you're faced with that sort of, you're feeling like you or your loved one isn't getting the care they need simply because of age, I think you should push for that kind of very careful assessment.
Thank you. We had a couple questions.
Can I answer that too?
Not right now. We're gonna go ahead and I mean that in the most respectful way possible, Dr. Poon. I really do. But we only have about 13 more minutes, and I know a lot of folks in the crowd have questions. So we're gonna try and start limiting questions to about 2 minutes per question.
Okay.
Everybody? And I know you had a question first, and then they've got some in the back. So go ahead.
Yes. First, I'm going to have a statement. This is fantastic. I'm very impressed, and thank you for everyone's knowledge. Question about prevention. We're in healthcare, most of us, for prevention. What are the things we can do for dementia prevention and ultimately Alzheimer's prevention for family and family members?
It's a great question.
I have my 5
Go
things.
for it.
See if I can remember my 5 things. So there's more than 5, but there are 5 things that I tell our patients, whether or not they get the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, that are good for healthy brain aging. Stay socially active, stay intellectually active, and try to marry those 2 things together. Right. So not just reading, doing intellectual activities on your own, but doing them in a social setting really helps. So those are good for brain stimulation. Eat a heart healthy diet. What's good for the heart is good for the brain, without question. And get a good night's sleep. Stay physically active to the extent that you can, but within the boundaries of safety and good judgment. And those are the 5 things. And those aren't just that they sound like things your mom might tell you, but there's good scientific evidence to support all of these as being helpful for brain aging, and even for individuals, like I said, who are in the early stages of a dementing illness.
Well, let me just add to that. Is that the accurate diagnosis is mandatory, because there are dementia that is reversible.
Oh, yes.
There's dementia is pathological, and we don't know how to change that.
Yeah.
All the medications that is approved by FDA, they do not work, period. They do not work. If you take a look at the clinical trials of these medications, the improvement is within the standard deviation of control.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is that if it is a pathologically diagnosed dementia, that some of the things that you're talking about only work for a certain time period until they get to different stages, to when they get to moderate and severe stage.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna do nothing
Right,
about that.
that's why I said, it's helpful in the early stages.
Great job, you guys.
Thank you.
Staying close to our time too. Question in the back?
The question I have, are we seeing you all being able to work with the medical students or medical schools in general so that we're sharing this information and try to combat ageism as we're producing new positions that are entering the workplace? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. So, yeah. We got one right there.
I was just gonna say that, you know, we, Dr. Scott, who is our geriatrician, for the care center, he, teaches in the, you know, medical partnership. And he also has, residents and med students who come with him, during appointments and come through on rotations with him. And then I was also gonna say that, I know, Lisa Ramsey Hammond has done, definitely continuing education and guest lectures and things like that with med students quite a bit, so.
You have your social work student.
Yeah, and I have a position, yeah.
Yeah, I have my neuropsychology students who are going to go out and be care providers.
And we've got
Yeah,
pharmacy
yeah.
students on our
Yeah.
team and, yeah. Awesome.
Great questions. Yes,
The services you all provide here at the care.
Oh, that's
Great
wonderful. That's-
So we have a clinic that is housed within this building. It is the room that is under construction over there. Yes. And we have kind of a clinical team that's interdisciplinary. So we've got Steve is our director of neuropsychology. I'm director of social support. We've got our medical director, Dr. Scott, pharmacy director, you know, and we all work together. And so the services that we offer are range from diagnosis. So we tend to see folks who do not already have a diagnosis and are looking for one. They have concerns about their memory or their family members do. And so if they come in to see us, they get an appointment with our geriatrician, and then they have a 3-hour neuropsych testing appointment with Steve and his neuropsych students. We all come back together as a team to kind of discuss the case, and then we do a summary appointment with the family and all of the clinicians that have worked on that case. And then we also provide social support services. So all the folks who come to us for diagnosis are offered the social support services, but those services are also offered to just community members who already have a diagnosis. So my team can do referrals to community resources, we have resource guides. I do a savvy caregiver training series that's like a 6-week long, 2 hours a week caregiver training series. And we have a caregiver support group. We've got a music therapy program for folks with a diagnosis that is at the same time as the caregiver support group, to try and remove barriers from caregivers being able to attend. And those are kind of all the things that we offer within the clinic. And then outside of the clinic falls, we have a whole rural health initiative. So
One of the things that
Yeah.
we do offer in the clinic here
Yeah.
through our partners in communication sciences, we
Yeah.
offer hearing tests.
there's an audiology booth
Audiology
near the
booth.
bathroom. So
We are working on, we're close to being able to set up vision assessments as well, so some sensory assessments. And we're working steadily toward establishing a telehealth service so we can provide the services that we do here, we can provide those to some of the rural counties that we
So people
work with.
can call and make an appointment.
Yes, they could call, make an appointment and
They can call, there's a screening process, it's about 15 minutes or so, they'll be speaking with most likely one of my social work interns, one of whom is here, in blue. And they do kind of a 15-minute screening process where we get all sorts of background information. And then we take all that information to our weekly rounds meeting where we discuss it with all the clinicians and try to determine if we're a good fit or if we need to refer to, if it's a little too complicated and there's some medical stuff, so we need to refer to neurology, or this is, if we're a good fit, then great, we get the person in. But otherwise, we're happy to provide continuing education like that.
Thank you. Claire, we have a quick question from some of the students in the room about your background with having a master's of business and health administration. How has that played into your role working in public health? And would you recommend somebody seeking out a MBA, MHA
Sorry.
over an MBA, MHA?
That's the shortest answer.
There we go. And that wraps us up, folks.
Hear that. I don't necessarily.
No education over the other education.
No, definitely not. I think for me, it was the right decision. I like, for me, I'm more of a business person. I think that way a little bit more. I love public health. I will always love public health. That's kind of how I grew up in UGA, kind of how it figured me out. But I also know from my experience more so in healthcare, because that's where my work is that there are lots and lots of business decisions that are made, and having that experience from getting my MBA and MHA is really helpful for me in the space that I work. I would not be successful as a clinical psychologist because I don't have that, but I work in a very different space. I think that getting my educational background is really, really helpful in healthcare. And it could be helpful in different spaces within public health. I think we all know that healthcare is a business. It also is very, very, very important. And we serve lots and lots and lots of people. And healthcare is very messed up. But I do have a lot of optimism that we slowly are trying to move in the right direction. I think the combination of quality and cost efficiency is really huge with that. And back to the question I apologize.
No, that was still helpful.
I think that having that perspective of the business side helps me to understand and gives me a perspective that's helpful within my job. Did that answer your question?
That was a lovely answer. Thank you. Thank you. We are, I guess,
Yeah, so we've learned a lot today, and to close this out, we would like each of our panelists to leave us with a quick tidbit. Emphasis on the quick. What is your secret to success?
45 seconds, you guys, each.
Okay, so I guess I can go first since I went first the last time. Stay active, stay curious, keep learning new things.
It's a good one.
Well, my
Love
answer is passion and perseverance.
There we go.
You can't do anything that
Bless you.
you don't have the passion, because that's going to sustain you, sustain me.
A few things. Look for a mentor. Find a mentor that you can trust, and don't be shy to reach out to them. Mentors are huge in helping you figure out life. And two, being willing to learn, and surrounding yourself with the right people, whether it's people that are just supporting you personally or the right people within the job.
That's a good answer.
Mhm.
Great answer.
I agree, that's good.
And I'm gonna kind of jump off from that one a little bit. I would say that a piece of advice that has been really helpful for me, just as I have aged over time and been down many different career paths and things like that, is as you're thinking about your career and what you want to do, there can be a lot of different voices in the room telling you which way you could go, and this would make me proud of you and things like that. And I would just urge you to, if you're gonna have to disappoint somebody else or yourself, always disappoint someone else.
Those are really awesome tips, you guys. Thank you so much. I wish we had more time for questions. I don't know about y'all, but I have tons more.
Can I make a point about the mentoring thing, just really?
Sure, of
quickly?
course.
'Cause that was great, and I really like that. And so you're never too old to have a mentor. So I'm the second oldest person on this table, and I go to mentors, and the mentors that I go to aren't always older than me. All right, so it could go both ways. So I think that's a really important thing that you mentioned. Yeah.
That's a great addition. Well, big thank you to you guys for appeasing all of our questions and giving us all this great information. Alumni board, do y'all have anything you want to add?
Yeah, we just wanted to tell you all, thank you for being here tonight. This was our chat with Changemaker. It started a long time ago as our Alumni Connection series, and we worked over to chat with Changemaker. We have worked really hard to keep this program alive, and I am so energized by seeing the turnout we had here. And thank you to our folks that participated via Zoom. We hope to see you all again for our next chat with the Changemaker. We've gotten some great ideas during our networking prior to this on what that could be. So thank you all. We appreciate it.